Good morning and welcome to the second of 5 political forums presented here on your local station, WRNJ. My name is Mike Galley and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's forum featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat. WRNJ presents these discussions to give you, the voter, an opportunity to learn more about the candidates vying for your vote in the general election on Tuesday, November 4th. Our forums air each weekday morning at 11 a.m. and will be rebroadcast at 7 p.m. each evening. The lone exception is today's 5th Congressional District seat forum, which will be heard Sunday evening, October 26th at 6 p.m. Audio from all our forums will also be posted on our website, WRNJ.com. You can find the forums under the online features in the audio archive section where you can listen or download. Today, we welcome to our studio candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett and Democratic challenger Roy Cho. Scott Garrett was first elected to represent New Jersey's 5th Congressional District in November 2002. Currently in his 6th term in Congress, Garrett serves as chairman of the Subcommittee on Capital Markets, Insurance, and Government-Sponsored Entities. Prior to his election to Congress, Garrett spent 12 years representing the 24th Legislative District as the senior assemblyman and assistant majority leader. Born in Bergen County in 1959, Garrett lives in Wantage with his wife, Mary Ellen, and 2 daughters. To learn more about Mr. Garrett, visit his website, garrettforcongress.com. The Democratic nominee, 33-year-old Roy Cho, is from Hackensack, and this is his first time as a political candidate. Cho is a business and private equity attorney with Kirkland & Ellis, LLP. Cho has served as pro bono legal counsel for community development organizations serving low-income areas and urban environmental groups. He also serves as a board member of the New Jersey Needs You and the Bergen Volunteer Medical Initiative. You can learn more about Roy Cho by visiting his website, roycho.com. Questions for our candidates this morning will be presented by New Jersey Herald columnist Rob Jennings and WRNJ News Director Joyce Estey. Rob Jennings is a columnist for the New Jersey Herald who calls the New Jersey RNJ morning program every Friday morning. His reporting has appeared in New Jersey Spotlight, Runner's World, and USA Today. He grew up in Queens and lives in Sparta. Joyce Estey has been the news director for WRNJ since 2000, has over 20 years of radio experience in radio news. Along with serving as the anchor for Morning Drive News, Joyce moderates a number of weekly public affairs programs here on RNJ, including Newsline. We will give each candidate up to 2 minutes to respond to questions from our panel. After each candidate has answered, they will be given an additional minute should they wish to elaborate or respond to previous statements. Questions will be asked on a rotating basis, and candidates do not have prior knowledge of the questions they will be asked. If time allows at the end of the forum, each candidate will be given an opportunity to summarize their positions on the issues and the candidacy. With the ground rules out of the way, we open up our questioning. Good morning, Rob Jennings. Your first question is for candidate Roy Cho.
Oh, good morning, Mike, and good morning, Congressman, and
Morning.
good morning, Mr. Cho. I think it's appropriate to start off with the first question with an issue that, if you believe the polls, has kind of redefined the race. Mr. Cho, you have raised objections to Congressman Garrett claiming a leadership role after Hurricane Sandy. Congressman Garrett has said in response that he did sign 9 or 10 letters about this. He did vote in the end for the bill, but you have stood by your position on that. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on that, say what you might have done differently. And, since you're both in the room here for the first time, it'd be great to hear what you both have to say in terms of your interpretations on this issue.
Thank you, Rob. I think for us, this is a credibility issue. The reality is on November 5th, there was a letter that was sponsored by Congressman Joe Crowley of New York, who I was just recently with a couple days ago for an Irish American event in Bergen County. He traveled over to talk about the congressional race right now. What he said was the reality was a letter that he put forth was a bipartisan feel-good letter that was presented to the leadership of both parties, to both Nancy Pelosi as well as John Boehner. And the purpose of the letter was after the storm on November 5th, a couple days after the storm had struck New Jersey and devastated the state, they wanted a bipartisan feel-good letter to be able to say that right now, as Republican and Democrats, everybody should come together and we need support from the federal government. Now, I don't care what your idea of government is, whether it should be big, small, or somewhere in between. We live in a civilized society, and there has to be a role that government can play sometimes. And after a natural catastrophe, in my purpose, in my lifetime, it's the biggest natural catastrophe that I've personally been involved in, we needed the government to be there. And out of all the members of the New Jersey congressional delegation, there was only one, and Congressman Garrett, who did not sign that letter, which would have been fine, but then for him to put out a mail piece to the residents of the 5th Congressional District claiming that he led the effort to get Hurricane Sandy relief, I believe is misleading. So I think for our purposes, what we want to be able to communicate to voters is a real issue. After Hurricane Sandy struck, we needed to send a message, a strong message to Washington, D.C., that the residents of the 5th Congressional District needed help. We needed federal aid to protect the citizens and provide support for the people who had been impacted by the storm. And Congressman Garrett was a lone member who did not sign on to that letter.
Okay, Congressman Scott Garrett, your turn.
Thank you, first of all, Rob and Joyce, and the station as well. I appreciate the chance to be here once again to take part in a debate. So let's go to the question. Roy, you said that you have hung most of your campaign on the assertion about I did not sign a letter. And now for the first time, you really describe what the letter is. It was simply a feel-good letter, and that's what you're so concerned about. Well, let's get the facts straight. It is about credibility, and the credibility here and the facts are this, that I was the one who sponsored and authored and wrote H.R. 41, the very first bill to bring Sandy relief to the citizens of the state of New Jersey. I sponsored it. I went and got a bipartisan delegation. All the people you mentioned who supported that letter, they were actually brought on to this bill by me. They supported my bill. This was the very first bill that actually passed the Congress in the House of Representatives that year, 1113-1. So I took the lead on passing that piece of legislation. Then, after we got past your feel-good letters, there were other more important letters actually to say how we should do this, how should we get it done, how the administration should be handling this. I was there. I was on each and every one of those bills. Beyond the feel-good letters that you're so concerned about, I was on 9 other letters to try to get relief to the people of the state of New Jersey. And then, at the end of the day, when we had the final bill, the final appropriation bill, I was there too. I supported that bill, and I voted yes on that piece of legislation. So you can make a case, and you can make your argument about a race when it's all about a so-called feel-good letter. I think it's more important to actually get things done in Congress. I was there with the Speaker. I was there with the Majority Leader. I was there with the Whip. I was there with the Republicans in New Jersey, and I was there with the Democrats in New Jersey. I wrote the bill. I sponsored the bill. I got it done. Feel-good legislation, that's really where the problem is. So much right now, people are dissatisfied with Washington because it is all about feel-good type of legislation. It's all about just going along and getting along. I think we actually have to get things done, and that's what I did in this case.
All right, candidate Roy Cho, your response.
The day before the final bill passed, Congressman Garrett, this is public record. He was actually talking to Jim Cramer, and he said he still hadn't made up his mind as to whether he would support. And the piece of legislation that Congressman Garrett put his name on was actually the least controversial part of the Hurricane Sandy relief bill. It had been broken up into parts. And the part that he favored and put his name on was insurance, considering the outdated flood maps that existed. He was basically making sure that the insurance people had insurance payouts for people who had flood insurance. But what about the thousands of other New Jerseyans who didn't have flood insurance? These people were basically left out to dry. And the reality is it may be called a feel-good letter, and I said that because there was no federal funding attached. The whole purpose of this letter, according to Joe Crowley, who authored the letter, and every other member of New Jersey Congressional Delegation signed on to, the whole purpose was to show a principled show of response, to show that bipartisan cooperation was going to be achieved in order to be able to make sure the New Jerseyans who were struck by Hurricane Sandy receive support. So for him to claim that he led the charge, I think, is inaccurate and misleading.
All right, and Congressman Garrett, your response.
Sure. Once again, it's not about doing things that just make people feel good. It's actually trying to help people. And you're absolutely right. This bill was to make sure that there would be money there for the people who actually bought flood insurance, that there would be money to pay their claims. Now, you may dismiss that, and you may say to people that if you had flood insurance, you don't care whether they got paid or not. I disagree. I want to make sure if you paid for flood insurance, you got your payment. If you paid for flood insurance for years and years and years and never put in a claim, I wanted to make sure that the federal government would be there and back it up. That's what I did. And I did it in a manner that was principled, and I did it in a manner that was bipartisan. It wasn't feel good as apparently what you're focused on. It was actually making sure that the people got their money. And at the end of the day, on that final bill, you're absolutely right. When I voted for it, when it came to the floor, I said what I have concerns about this bill, but at the end of the day, I said, let's make sure that the people get their payments. I vote yes, and I voted yes strongly on that bill to make sure that everyone, whether you would make sure that people who were hurt by Sandy would get the relief that they needed. I was there, and I did the right thing in a bipartisan, principled way.
All right, very good. Thank you, gentlemen, for your responses. It is time for us to take our break. You are listening to the second of 5 political forums presented by your local station, RNJ, today featuring candidates for the 5th District Congressional seat in New Jersey, Democratic candidate Roy Cho, Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett. It's time for us to take a short break. We will be right back.
When it comes to taking care of ourselves, we've all heard the advice. Pace yourself. Lift with your legs, not your back. But you know, it takes no time at all for the simplest of activities to put you out of commission. Pulling a large bag of dog food out of the trunk, even just working in the garden. One wrong twist and, well, should your body make that one wrong move, don't panic, because Synergy Physical Therapy and Fitness is here to help. Run by licensed physical therapists who are uniquely qualified to give you direction and map out the best route to get you back to form without pressuring you to overdo it. Whether recovering from an injury or operation or just looking to get into better shape, why not see if Synergy's friendly, spandex-free atmosphere is what you've been looking for? Synergy Physical Therapy and Fitness, Route 57 Mansfield, behind Ruby Tuesdays. Online at synergyphysicaltherapy.com.
When the power goes out, your life is disrupted. Basements flood, security systems quit. Heat, air conditioning, refrigeration, phones, all gone. Last year alone, 41 million people lost power for an average of 5 days. And with severe storms becoming a common occurrence, it's only going to get worse. So how can you take back control? A Generac home standby generator protects your home against power outages every second of every day, all year long, ready to automatically supply power to your home within seconds of an outage, whether you're home or away. And because it runs on either natural gas or LP, you won't have to wait in line to buy gasoline, ever. Generac has been designing and building home standby generators right here in the U.S. since 1959. Today, they're the #1 brand in residential standby generators. Control your power, control your life with a Generac home standby generator.
Your local authorized Generac sales and service dealer is professional electrician Frank Fontana at Get Wired 2. Just go online to getwired2.com. Look for them on Facebook.
It's no secret that addiction devastates individuals and families, leaving behind destroyed lives, abandoned dreams, and a feeling of being horribly alone. But there is a program upcoming that can begin to restore hope. Presented by the Family Guidance Center of Warren County, the program is entitled The Science of Addiction, Removing the Stigma. And this very important conference will be held in the front parlor of the C Building at Centenary College, Monday the 27th from 8 a.m. until 1. You'll hear from public figures, business leaders, guest speakers, and members of the general community in order to develop a comprehensive view of substance abuse and its impact on the greater Warren County area. Seating is limited and pre-registration required. Your $25 registration fee includes breakfast and a snack. To register, call Chelsea Bone at 908-689-1000 for The Science of Addiction, Removing the Stigma, Monday the 27th at Centenary College, 908-689-1000.
Welcome back to today's political forum on RNJ, featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Democratic candidate Roy Cho and Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett. New Jersey Herald columnist Rob Jennings and WRNJ News Director Joyce Estey are presenting the questions. Before we return to questions for our candidates, I want to tell you about next week's series of forums very quickly. On Monday, October 27th, we will focus on 2 candidates running for Warren County Freeholder. On Tuesday, October 28th, we will talk with candidates of the Alamucci Board of Education. And on Wednesday, October 29th, our forum will focus on Blairstown Committee race. Each of our forums airs weekday mornings at 11 a.m., rebroadcast at 7 p.m., and the lone exception for that will be today's forum, which we will be heard on Sunday evening, October 26th at 6 p.m. Audio from all of our forums will also be presented on our RNJ website, WRNJ.com. You can find the forums under online features in the audio archive section where you can listen or download. And now we return to our questions. Joyce Estey.
Congressman Garrett, there's a question for both of you, but this, first of all,
Start
this is
with
a
me.
little off the beaten trail, if you will, from Sandy. Parallel to the Base Closing Commission that was headed by Congressman Jim Corder years ago, and they were charged with eliminating the less useful, we'll say, military bases. What would you think of actually forming a waste ending commission because of all the pork, if you will, in?
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's an interesting question. So I knew Jim Corder, and was friends with Jim Corder, and I think that was one of the good initiatives that Jim and the Congress at that time initiated, because oftentimes in politics you can't get things done the way you would like it to, and so what they did back then was what did they do? They set up this commission of some experts on the military bases around the country, realized that at that point in time, at least, we had a overabundance of them in certain areas, and they set up a process where they would come out and say, these are the ones we should phase out over a period of time, and gave it to Congress with basically a yes or no, up or down vote on it, where you couldn't interject the bad politics of these things into it. And I think it's worked out fairly well, although we've had to go back and revisit, and now that we're in a new age of international military issues, may have to revisit it again. Going forward, it may be a way to address the issue, but quite honestly, I think our founding fathers intended for their elected representatives to stand up and represent their constituents at home, and that's what I've been doing. I believe that Washington has a spending problem and not a revenue problem. I believe that we spend too much money in Washington, and it's not that we should be taking more money out of the people's pockets here at home. And this is one area where I disagree with my opponent. My opponent, who sits here, says that we should be spending more in Washington and that we should be taxing more from the constituents. I don't think so. I've talked to too many people who have told me that they have a hard time right now making ends meet as it is, paying for the groceries, paying for the gas, paying for their kids' education, and so on the list goes. And Washington and other taxes continues to go and puts a burden on them. What I've done, and my record in Washington is clear, is to try to scale down Washington, to fight to reduce spending and make Washington live within its means, just like every one of us who is listening to this program has to live within its means, just like this radio station has to live within its means as well. And that's my position. Unfortunately, my opponent disagrees with that position.
All right. Your response to that question, candidate Roy Cho.
I think the reality is, I think context matters. I think nuance matters. I think this is something that's been lost in Washington, D.C. A lot of politicians nowadays like to resort back to rhetoric and talking about how they want to keep your taxes low. Nobody wants to raise your taxes. The reality is, how can we figure out creative ways, engage the ideas of the private sector to make long-term investments in our infrastructure, to make long-term investments in our public education system, so we can have long-term economic growth. Now, of course, with regard to the military bases that were closed down, I think this, again, localized context is going to matter. You have to figure out how many jobs and what the necessity is based upon local context. But the reality is, the larger problem, I think, right now with what Congressman Garrett is saying is that, of course, everybody wants to be able to get rid of pork. But the reality is, when there's necessary federal funding projects, funding that the constituents of the 5th District need to make their lives better, to improve the roads and bridges and fix the bridges and roads in this district and make transportation more convenient and make it more efficient, there has to be a role for government to play. And we have congressional districts, 435 in the United States, and each member of Congress is responsible for responsibly fighting for and aggressively advocating for the interests of their constituencies. So, of course, when federal funding, for example, for police officers in Paramus, I was just recently with Congressman Bill Pasquale in Paramus on the cops bill, which put more cops in the beat and provided federal dollars to put those cops in the beat. That type of federal funding, if we don't have a member of Congress who advocates for those funds, it doesn't go back into the pockets of taxpayers, it goes elsewhere. So I think right now what's problematic to me is we have a member of Congress who is not fighting for and aggressively advocating for the interests and needs of the constituents of the 5th District. Now, of course, I work on the business side. I'm a corporate attorney, so I recognize that you have to be smart about what we do. We have to be disciplined. But the reality is we have to look for creative long-term investments to grow our economy. And in my mind, investing in our people, in our teachers, investing in our roads and bridges, investing in our infrastructure, these are long-term investments that lead to long-term economic stability and growth.
All right, thank you. Congressman Scott Garrett, your response.
Thanks so much. So Roy here says that no one wants to raise their taxes. That's not true, Roy. The President of the United States has said he wants to, and he has repeatedly with the Obamacare has raised people taxes. A whole series of taxes have increased there, and you have supported the President on this and other initiatives as well. You said no one wants to raise taxes. Well, you have said that you want to raise spending in Washington. So where's that money going to come from and for all that new spending that you want? Well, it's going to come from the hard-working people from the state of New Jersey. It's going to come hard-working people here in the 5th Congressional District, right here in Warren County where we are right now. The answer is not one more federal program to every problem. That's what the failed policies of the past is. The answer is not another series of crony capitalism where politicians in Washington picks the winners and losers, as you suggest with your programs. The answer is to allow the American public, the taxpayer, the hard-working American, to keep more money in their pocket. Let them make decisions as to what investments they want to make, as opposed to allowing politicians make investments with their political friends, as you seem to encourage.
Okay, candidate Roy Cho, you have 1 minute to respond.
I'm a fiscal conservative as well. I take spending taxpayer dollars very seriously, as everyone else should do. As Americans, we pay tax dollars, and we want to be able to get a return on our investment. And the reality is, you can, for example, go into a business, as I do in the business side as a corporate attorney. Again, I'm not a politician like Congressman Garrett, so for him to tie me to the politics of Washington, D.C. is frankly inaccurate, because this is my first time running for elected office. But if you're going to buy a business, for example, you can make the easy decision and lay people off and make your company more profitable at the margins. But the reality is, are you making long-term investments to grow your company? And from my perspective, spending wisely, spending smartly, investing in public education, investing in our roads and bridges, investing in clean energy and alternative energy. This is not spending. This is focusing on how we can have long-term revenue growth.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Rob, your question.
Part of what makes this race so compelling is that there are such dramatic differences on so many policy issues, from transportation and gun control or gun safety, the environment, even animal protection. Let's focus on education. Mr. Cho, you've talked about education as a national priority and talked about investing federal education dollars directly into classrooms, while Congressman Garrett has at one point, I guess, endorsed eliminating the federal education department and letting parents and teachers, localities, and states have more of a say on the issue, according to his website. And I'd like to see both of you, if you could, expand on your views on this topic of education.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
I think the reality is, of course, what we need is local input from the teachers and from the parents. Right now, of course, what we have to focus upon doing, however, is making our next generation of leaders, making sure that they're more prepared for a global job marketplace. Now, I'm on the board of an education-based nonprofit, and what we focus on doing is providing exposure to students at an early age so they can understand what it takes to go from going to high school and then going to potentially vocational or getting apprenticeship training, or going to college and going to grad school. I mean, these are investment decisions that they're making in their long-term future, so we have to provide them in the classrooms with the information necessary to be able to smartly and intelligently make those decisions. Now, in terms of what's happening right now at the federal level, in terms of Congressman Garrett's idea of localizing everything, of course we need local input. But I'm proud to say that I have the full endorsement of the American Federation of Teachers, as well as the New Jersey Education Association, which shows that I believe in investing in the people who are educating our future leaders. This should not be something that's politics. We should be able to divorce ideology from this argument. We should focus on what's best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is a realization that education is complex and nuanced. Now, we need two things. We need some sort of across-the-board standards, but standards does not equate standardization. So, for example, if you're going to school in Alabama, or if you're going to school, public high school in New Jersey, there's probably going to be differences in terms of local context. There's going to be differences in terms of what you learn in the classroom. But when you go off to the same university, you should still be at a certain equal starting point in terms of the information that you've been provided with and the training that you've been provided with. At the same time, that being said, we have to make sure that we take local context into account, and we have to hear the voices of the stakeholders, which are the parents and the teachers who are educating our kids. So this is what I want to be able to focus upon. How can we do the delicate balancing act? Because our education of the future leaders of America is too important to play politics with. And we have to both have standards at the national level, but we also need as much meaningful input as possible from the local educators as well as from the parents to ensure that that their children are being provided with the best education possible.
Okay, thank you, candidate Roy Cho. Congressman Scott Garrett, your response to this question.
This is a good question because, as you say, it shows the difference in our perspectives on these things. And I think Mr. Roy's answer right now basically shows his liberal ideology, not only on this issue, but probably on a whole host of issues. What do I mean by that? Your ideology basically believes in a top-down approach to each one of these issues that we're talking about, as opposed to a bottom-up approach. What did you say? You're all in favor of local input, but you're not in favor of local control. Well, I'm in favor of local control. Who cares more about your kids than you do? I have 2 daughters. No one cares more about my 2 daughters than my wife and I. I don't want just input. I want control of my education of my kids. Parents that are listening to this program right now, they care more than anybody else about their kids, about their teachers, about their schools, about the principals, about the programs in the schools, what they're teaching, than anyone sitting around this table, and clearly any more than any bureaucrat that you want to put the responsibility, Roy, down in Washington. I don't know if I were to ask you, but I'm not going to, can you name the top 6 or 7 bureaucrats down in Washington that you want to be in charge of these things? I doubt you can name them all. I'm sure the parents out there are not in that position to be able to name them all. But what do you want to do? You want to allow the parents, you can have a little bit of input, parents, but at the end of the day, the decision's going to be made in Washington. At the end of the day, it's going to be a top-down approach. And your view, and at the end of the day, the control comes from Washington, not locally. I disagree with that vehemently. As a father and as a parent, I believe the control rests at home. And when it comes to this, I've supported legislation to do so, to return the control back. And that's why I'm opposed to Common Core. I'm opposed to No Child Left Behind. So I'm bipartisan to this. I've opposed President Bush, who's a Republican, who had his idea of a top-down approach on No Child Left Behind. And I've opposed President Obama, who's a Democrat, who thinks that he controls and knows better than the parents do at home. Okay. And so I oppose what you stand for, Mr. Cho.
All right. Thank you very much, Congressman Garrett. Candidate Roy Cho, you have 1 minute to respond.
I think education is too important for us to be playing political games and simplifying things into black and white policy divides, saying it's top down or bottom up. The reality is parents need input, teachers need input, but we also have to be able to provide teachers with the ability to teach to their children and basically take local context into account. As every teacher out there knows, every classroom is different and every student is different. So if we are having a sophisticated argument that takes into account the individualized needs of our students and their future leaders of America, then this cannot be a black and white, top-down or bottom-up approach. We have to involve all the stakeholders. I think parents right now who are focusing upon their kids who are graduating from high school, going off to college, which has become so unaffordable right now, which is something that we have to address. We have to focus upon how can we prepare them to get a job. This isn't about what President Obama is doing. This isn't what about bureaucrats are doing in Washington, D.C. Parents and teachers don't care about that. They care about the future of their kids. And if the future of our kids is going to be left in the hands of politicians who are going to consistently put ideology over the interests and needs of their kids' future, then that's a problem.
All right. Thank you. Congressman Scott Garrett, your response. 1 minute.
Sure. I guess as a Wall Street attorney, I guess you look at everything as being nuanced and what have you, as you say repeatedly. And when you say that these issues of education are just too important what? To allow the parents to decide what happens with their kids? I disagree vehemently. I think parents should be in control. I think the local school board should be in control. I think the local decisions should be made right here at home. No one cares more or is more involved than people locally. Input's not enough. And when we spend dollars on this, the dollars should be decided by us right here in Warren County, Sussex, Bergen, Passaic. We should be in control on how those dollars, not some nameless, faceless bureaucrat under the program that you want. We all want the best for our kids. We all want to make sure that they excel. We all want to make sure that they can get great jobs and live good lives and a prosperous life in the future. And the people who can make those decisions are the family members and not some bureaucrat that you would have Washington control. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Congressman Scott Garrett. It looks like it's a wonderful time for us to take another break. You are listening to the second of 5 political forums presented by your local station, RNJ, today featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett, and Democratic candidate Roy Cho. We'll be right back after a short break.
Ready for some pumpkin picking? Donaldson Farms is ready for you. Every Saturday and Sunday from now to Halloween, Donaldson Farms on Allen Road in Hackettstown is all set up for family fun on the farm. Pick your own pumpkins, gourds, and Indian corn. Take the kids through Donaldson Farms' famous corn maze. Then a hayride or pony ride. Duck races are always a treat, and so is a corn cannon. Every Saturday and Sunday this fall, Donaldson Farms is the place to be for family fun. There's always music to enjoy, whether it's a live live band, DJ, or Donaldson's own special farm mix. And bring an appetite, because you'll always have a nice choice of delicious food available. While you're there, load up on fresh picked apples and be sure to take home a fresh baked pie. Lots to choose from and lots to do at the one place that's tailor-made for family fun on the farm, Donaldson Farms. There's no entrance fee and plenty of free parking. Bring the family and pick those pumpkins this weekend and every weekend this fall at Donaldson Farms, Allen Road, Hackettstown.
Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us. Please hold for the next available operator. Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us. Please hold for the next available operator. Oh, who's kidding who? If your call was that important, you'd be talking to a real person by now. Like at Panther Valley Pharmacy. I hear it's nice, if you're into that kind of thing.
Panther Valley Pharmacy, this is Annie.
Hi, this is Bogdan. Hi, Panther Valley Pharmacy, this is Bob. How can I help you?
Wow, real people on the phone? It'll never catch on.
Calling all boys and ghouls, mommies and daddies. You'll have a howling good time at the Monster Bash 3K Dash. It's a Twilight 1.86-mile run-walk, Saturday, October 25th at Turkey Brook Park in Mount Olive. There will also be a campfire and trick-or-treating, so make sure you come in costume. The run starts at 6 p.m. The Monster Bash 3K Dash, Saturday, October 25th. For more information, call 973-691-0900 or online at MountOliveTownship.com.
Welcome back to today's political forum on RNJ, featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett and Democratic candidate Roy Cho. Please note that we are recording this program at 11 a.m. on Friday, October 24th. We will re-air it at Sunday p.m., 6 p.m. Sunday evening, October 26th. The program will also be available online in the audio archive section of our website, WRNJ.com. And now back to our forum with questions from New Jersey Herald columnist Rob Jennings and WRNJ News Director Joyce Esty.
I'm next.
And Joyce is next.
I am. Okay. You have both accused each other of not being in touch with your constituents in the 5th District. So, Congressman Garrett, why do you feel that you are more in touch with your constituents?
Well, I appreciate the question. So, I've represented this area for a number of years and have been in these debates repeatedly. But as you know, I grew up in this district. I was born in this district, lived first in a house that my dad built in this district, went to school in this district, built and bought and then built another house in this district, lived now on our family farm in this district, got married in this district, had 2 children in this district. They went to school in this district, worked in this district, voted in this district, enjoyed coming and traveling about here, all 4 counties in this district, enjoy the bucolic nature where we are right now in Warren County and the more suburban areas of Bergen County. I've lived my life here. Now, that's contrary to my opponent here, who, well, we're really not sure what his history is with the district. First, he told one of the reporters here with us today he moved here 2.5 years ago. And then when he was questioned on that because he was told that, well, he voted down in South Jersey when he said he lived here, he said, well, no, I actually moved here at a different time. So now he says he only moved here a year ago. Well, and then the story changed again when his voting record came up, and he said, well, other people do that, but I really was living down there in South Jersey. And then he tells other people that he was living here in New York City. He tells the Supreme Court he was living over there. He tells people other here. We're really sure where and when he has lived here, but by and large, he's basically only moved here a year ago. He's never lived in this district, never voted in this district before. He never worked in this district until he came here from New York and decided he thought he might like to run for Congress someday, and he just made the announcement soon after that he's going to run for Congress to represent the people in the 5th Congressional District.
All right, thank you, Congressman Scott Garrett. Candidate Roy Cho, your answer to this question.
People, both Democrat and Republican, have been telling me that the smear campaign, the character assassination, is frankly very uncouth, and people are upset and offended by it. The reality is we've now had John Weingart of the Eagleton Institute at Rutgers University, as well as Bill Tambusi, who's considered to be one of the most preeminent election lawyers in the state of New Jersey, who have both independently confirmed that I have broken no law, and they have both confirmed that what I've done is neither illegal nor uncommon. So the reality is, let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about Congressman Garrett's voting record, because that's what's actually impacting the people of the 5th Congressional District. Now, the reality is, Congressman Garrett can say that he's lived here his entire life, but my question to him is, what type of representation is he providing for the people who live here right now? Because there are non-controversial things. I don't care whether you live in California or New Jersey or anywhere else in between. The reality is, when Congressman Garrett is one of 9 members of the U.S. Congress who votes against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, when he's one of 33 members of the entire U.S. House out of 435 who votes against the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, which is considered by many to be one of the most important pieces of civil rights legislation, and when he is one of only a handful of members of Congress from New Jersey, who's against federal funding for transportation projects to invest in our infrastructure, when he's against when he's against lowering interest rates for students, when the reality is college has become more and more unaffordable, when he votes against our veterans, when he votes to allow airlines to charge veterans baggage fees when they're returning from combat. All these issues that impact everybody. When he has a plan to privatize Social Security and turn Medicare into a voucher system, these are things that I think, regardless of where you live in the United States, as an American, regardless whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you should care about these issues that impact everybody. This is about our collective interest in this country, and the reality is, Congressman Garrett, because he realizes that this campaign is tightening. This is a close race. It's going to come down to the wire. He's playing these political games to distract from his voting record, and we should be reminding everybody that this is about his record as being a member of Congress since 2002, and what has he, as somebody who's lived here his whole life, as he says, what has he done for the residents of the 5th Congressional District?
All right. Thank you, candidate Roy Cho. Congressman Scott Garrett, your response, 1 minute.
Sure, and Roy, I think you missed the question entirely. The question was, what is your connection to both of us to this district? And I told mine was a lifelong connection to the district. You didn't answer the question at all. Basically, that still remains the question. Apparently, you moved here a year ago in order to run for Congress. Prior to that, you were in New York City. Prior to that, you were down the Jersey Shore. And I guess one of our takeaway answers that you just said is, you broke no law. And you are not a carpetbagger. I think it was the other comment that you made to other press. Well, the question was, what is your connection? You have never lived here. You've never voted here. You have never worked here. Prior to you making the announcement that you want to rent an apartment in Hackensack and saying that now you want to run for office in the 5th Congressional District, the answer to Joyce's question is, you have no connection to the 5th Congressional District other than that you want to run for Congress here.
All right. Thank you, Congressman Scott Garrett. Candidate Roy Cho, you have 1 minute to respond.
It seems to me that the only people who are obsessed with this question is Congressman Garrett as well as his campaign team, because they realize that the polls have tightened and they realize that he's in a tough re-election battle. But again, I think it's a disservice to the constituents of the 5th Congressional District to be talking about where I voted. We should be talking about how Scott Garrett voted against the residents of the 5th Congressional District. Now, I would love to have been able to. We had 2 hours. This is a pretty short debate today, and only an hour, but we had 2 hours to answer questions at the recent debate in Ridgewood, where we had hundreds of people who came out on a weeknight to be able to actually debate the issues. And I think that this is the one debate that I'm getting right now as a challenger in a congressional race, which I think is unfortunate because we should be having more debates. But this is our one opportunity. So again, I want to be able to be asking questions about Congressman Garrett's voting record, because that's what people care about. When people come up to me and ask me about the issues, they're asking me about what impacts them as somebody who lives here. And things that are uncontroversial, the Violence Against Women Act, the Voting Rights Act, the letter to support people after Hurricane Sandy, these are not controversial things, and we should be focusing upon these issues.
All right. Thank you very much, candidate Roy Cho. Our next question, Rob Jennings.
Yeah, getting back to again, there's so many issues on which you're on other sides. Governor Christie drew a lot of attention Tuesday when he said he is tired, quote unquote, of hearing about raising the minimum wage. President Obama has proposed raising the federal minimum wage from, I guess, $7.25 to $10.10. Now, on your website, Mr. Cho, you have supported raising the minimum wage, although I didn't see you specify by how much exactly, and you noted that Congressman Garrett opposed the last increase in 2009. So if you could both expand on your views in this particular area.
Sure. Thank you, Rob. I think that a strong middle class is frankly the backbone of this country's economy. When you look at the numbers, 70% of GDP growth is based on consumer spending. And who's spending that money? And the people in the top income brackets are investing their money. The people in the middle of the income bracket, these are the people who are spending that money and keeping our economy going. So I think this isn't about playing class warfare. This isn't about vilifying rich people or turning the rich against the poor. This is about what's in our nation's collective economic self-interest. And in my mind, having a strong middle class and allowing that middle class to be able to spend their dollars and inject those dollars back into the local economies, this is a stimulus that we need to have a strong economy. This is a stimulus that we need to make sure that we continue to remain the most powerful and most relevant country in the entire world. So for me, I am in favor of raising the minimum wage. I'm also in favor of extension of unemployment benefits. I'm in favor of things that a lot of common sense Americans are in favor of, because right now people need help. 5.9% unemployment, but the reality is people in Warren County, Sussex County, Passaic, and Bergen County, people need help. $65,000 a year for a family of 4 in New Jersey, as many people know, many of the listeners know, is frankly not enough. College has become too affordable. And I talk to residents of the 5th Congressional District in all 4 counties, and they tell me about the same things. They tell me that without a strong middle, our country cannot survive. And people right now need help, and they're not getting it. And again, this isn't about putting taxpayer dollars back into their pockets. The reality is we have federal funding that's available, and the federal funding has to be used smartly, but we need somebody who's going to aggressively advocate for the interests of everybody here, and that includes the middle class, because when the middle class is strong, everybody up and down the income bracket can prosper. And I think a lot of people who work in the financial services industry understand that, and a lot of people who do not work in that industry who are hurting right now and who need help also understand that.
All right, very good. Thank you, candidate Roy Cho. Congressman Scott Garrett, your answer to that question.
So thank you very much. I appreciate the question. And I've talked to a number of people about the minimum wage situation, as Roy also raises here, the unemployment benefits extension as well. And as you know, on the latter point, I've voted a number of times to extend unemployment benefits. But at the end of the day, when I talk to people who are out of work or not making as much money as they need to support their family, they're not looking for yet another government handout or another top-down approach. What they really want for themselves and their family and their kids is a good paying job. And that's really where my focus on in Congress has been, and my fight against this administration's on its policy is of what? This administration has raised taxes on the very same middle class that Roy here says he wants to support. Well, Roy, you should be telling your president, because you haven't so far, that he should stop taxing the middle class like he is, as much as he is right now, why he should stop taking so much money from New Jersey and sending it down to Washington bureaucrats to allow them to make the decisions, as opposed to allow people keeping it in their pockets. People talk about austerity in the world today or in the country today. Well, maybe we need a little more austerity in the spending down in Washington, as opposed to what this administration and yourself, Roy, wants to do, and that is putting so much austerity on the American taxpayer. By saying that the American taxpayer has to keep on shelling out more taxes, has to do without, because you want Washington to be spending that money, is not the answer. This administration has failed in so many regards with regard to the promises it has made. Back in 2008, the president said, all we need to do is spend $1 trillion on stimulus measures and we would get unemployment down below 8%. Well, he was not right on that promise, as he has not been right on so many other promises. It's been a failed economic policy. My effort in Washington is to do what? To turn this economy around, put people back to work, give people the careers that they want and need to support themselves, their family, and their kids as well.
All right, Congressman Scott Garrett, thank you. Candidate Roy Cho, you have 1 minute to respond.
I think the listeners of this debate, as well as the residents of the 5th Congressional District, they deserve better than us just simply saying, as people who are looking to serve in elected office, that we should tighten our belts and that we don't like taxes, because anybody can say that. That's a simple thing to say. But the reality is I respect the intelligence and the sophistication of the residents of the 5th Congressional District, and they recognize that this is about how can we make long-term investments. How can we make long-term investments in our infrastructure? How can we make long-term investments in our public education system? How can we make long-term investments in clean and alternative energy so we can cut our foreign dependence on oil? These are long-term investments that lead to long-term economic growth. One of the first votes that Congressman Garrett ever took when he was first elected in 2002 was a vote against unemployment benefits for jobless Americans in the middle of a recession. So again, this goes back to common sense. Americans need help right now, despite the fact that unemployment is at 5.9%. New Jersey is the 5th most expensive state to live, and we deserve a congressman that's going to take a sophisticated and nuanced approach to solving this problem and leading to long-term economic growth.
All right, thank you, candidate Roy Cho. Congressman Scott Garrett, you have 1 minute to respond.
So, Roy, I think one of your comments before really capsulizes how you view people's tax dollars when you said spending money on long-term investment or using tax dollars for long-term investment is not spending. Yes, it is, Roy. Any time that you take money out of somebody's pocket here in Warren County or Sussex or Bergen County and send it down to a bureaucrat down in Washington, D.C., for them to decide how to spend it as opposed to that person who earned it, that's spending. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand the nuances, as you would put it, of how Washington operates. And when you said before, well, this is federal dollars that we're using here. No, it's not, Roy. These are our dollars. The federal government doesn't just make money. Well, yeah, I guess the Federal Reserve does, but the federal government doesn't create wealth. It's the people who work at their jobs 9 to 5 or longer, much longer, every single day. They're creating the wealth of America, and you're wrong to say that we should be taking it from them, sending it to Washington for whatever laundry list of ideas that you may have or this administration has as far as what is the spending program of the day, whether it's using it to bail out Fannie and Freddie, one of the clients of your firm, or Solyndra, those failed energy policy, green energy programs out that cost the taxpayer $500 million out there.
All right.
Thank you.
Very
Didn't
good.
see the clock.
It's all right. Congressman Scott Garrett, thank you for your answer and response. It is time for us to take our third break, and we will return in just a second. You are listening to the fourth of the debates, featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District. Democratic candidate Roy Cho and Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett will be right back.
Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. It's something that Home Instead Senior Care does nearly every day. And according to Home Instead owner Tracy Fazzolari, that match can make all the difference.
We form relationships. We're matching caregivers and aides to clients. So when they are introduced formally to their client for the first time, amazing things happen. There's a connection that's made. There's a reintroduction to life, an independence that maybe they didn't have before, with a lot of that isolation and disconnect. Because let's face it, family, children can't be there every minute. So the most amazing thing is when those connections and those sparks start to fly and the relationships are being built and the trust and that bond is being forged. Wonderful things happen.
Make a match that makes a difference at Home Instead Senior Care.
To us, it's personal.
Did you know that, like fingerprints, everyone's tongue has a unique print? Did you know that 50% of people consider your smile the first facial feature they notice? Or that children smile 400 times a day, women 62 times a day, and men just 8? Did you know that gum disease is the main cause of tooth loss in adults and has been linked to heart disease or stroke? And how's this? Regular flossing can add 6.9 years to your life. See where this is going? Taking regular care of your teeth and gums is directly related to your overall health, and it's why regular dental care is so important. Preventive maintenance isn't just a good idea for your vehicle. It applies to your oral health as well. Something to think about from Dr. Gary Vandervliet and his staff at Advanced Dental Care of West Morris at Hastings Commons, Schoolies Mountain Road, Hackettstown. For an appointment or more information, call 908-852-8858 or go online to thehightechdentist.com.
Discover the difference at Hackettstown Hyundai with Columbus Day savings all month long. Set sail and discover real savings. Up to $10,000 off MSRP. Get 0% for 72 months or no payments for 1 year. And they'll include their exclusive free lifetime powertrain warranty and free tires for life. Lease a 2015 Elantra for $99 a month, or a 2015 Sonata for $109 a month, or a 2015 Tucson for $129 a month. Get the credit you need on the Hyundai you want. It's all happening right now at Hackettstown Hyundai. Offers to qualified buyers. Details at htownhyundai.com.
We've got you covered for life.
Welcome back to today's Political Forum on RNJ, featuring candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Democratic candidate Roy Cho, and Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett, New Jersey Herald columnist Rob Jennings, and WRNJ News Director Joyce Esty presenting the questions. And we go now to Joyce Esty with a question for Congressman Garrett.
Congressman Garrett, I have a problem with Congress being exempt from rules that govern the people. I'm going to give you an example. Obamacare, for instance. I have to live by it, and it's all of us, most of us in this room do. Your thoughts with regard to that elitist attitude in Congress.
Okay, so I agree with you that there should not be any elitist attitude in my members of Congress, and I certainly don't have one. With regard to your point, too, on Obamacare, I know a lot of people believe that members of Congress are exempt from Obamacare. It's not true. I am in Obamacare, that failed system that has hurt so many people, that system that upwards 800,000 people in New Jersey were going to lose their coverage because of Obamacare, that system that means people's insurance rates are going up, that system that people are losing their doctors, that system that the president pushed without any Republican support whatsoever, and that system which my opponent here, Roy, says he basically supports. That is a failed system, but I'm in it. So, for example, very quickly, I had to go on the computer. I spent all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and half a day Monday sitting at my home computer logging on because of a failed system in this administration. Finally, I logged on. Finally, I got in. Finally, I had to buy my own policy. Remember the president made another promise? The president promised your rates would go down by $2,500. Well, my rates went up by $2,500. Remember he promised you wouldn't lose your doctors? Well, I lost my doctor. Remember he promised that your deductibles wouldn't go up? Well, my deductibles did go up. So all the promises that this president made, all the plans of Obamacare that Roy here supports have hurt not just me and my family, but literally tens or hundreds of thousands of people across this country as well. I'll give you, if I have time, just an example. A little bit ago, I spoke to a woman in Ramsey. She said she had a job. They had health insurance, provided everything she needed for her and her husband, who she took care of. Obamacare came along. Rates went up more than first of all, her employer turned off her insurance. They got rid of it. Then she had to get her own. Rates went up. She lost the only doctor in the area that treated what she has. She doesn't know what she's going to do. She is in tears. She can't take care of her husband anymore. Why? Because of the failed system of Obamacare, of this administration, and exactly what Roy here wants to perpetuate for the rest of America going forward.
Congressman Scott Garrett, thank you. Candidate Roy Cho, your answer to that question.
I also agree. I think we definitely have to address the elitist attitude that certain individuals in Congress right now are taking. And the reality is, I'm not in Washington, D.C. This is my first time running. I'm not a politician. I come from the private sector. And the reality is, Congressman Garrett can continue to try to tie me to President Obama, but I think, again, the constituents of the 5th Congressional District realize that I come from the private sector, and I have nothing to do with the president. If I called the president today, I would never get to him. I'm running as a first-time candidate, and the reality is we have to be focusing upon what matters to the people here instead of empty rhetoric. You're talking about Obamacare, talking about the Affordable Care Act. There are things that we certainly do have to fix. For example, we have to allow Medicare to negotiate directly with pharmaceutical companies. We also have to make sure that small businesses who are facing the cliff of 50 employees, this is appropriately being dealt with and addressed. We also have to address individuals who have paid for their own insurance whose premiums have gone up. These are very real problems that we have to focus upon fixing. That being said, there are certain good things that Obamacare, that the Affordable Care Act does do in terms of keeping kids on their parents' insurance at the age of 26, obviously pre-existing conditions, and we have to focus upon how we can make the Affordable Care Act work better. But the reality is we also have to focus upon meaningful campaign finance reform, because this goes back to the heart of Joyce's question, in the sense that right now you have politicians, including Congressman Scott Garrett, who receives a tremendous amount of special interest money, which prevents members of Congress from taking courageous leadership on legislation that really impacts everybody. So I think the primary problem right now that we should be talking about is how can we focus on campaign finance reform to take the power of special interest money out of Washington, D.C., so that members of Congress can go back to their constituents and ask them, what can I do for you to make your life better? How can we help you? Instead of going to the lobbyists and asking that question.
All right, very good. Thank you, Candidate Cho. We are running short of time, but Rob Jennings, you have one question
just
you would like to ask.
a quick yes or no question. I wasn't going to ask this, but I read the Bergen Record Edit Board interview, and I think it left some ambiguity on your position. So yes or no to you both, would you be open to reviving the ARC Tunnel project?
Yes, Roy Cho, I say yes.
Yes.
All right, very good, excellent. I am going to give each of you candidates 30 seconds to basically summarize and to wrap things up. And the candidate Roy Cho, we will start with you. 30 seconds.
This election is about credibility. The reality is Congressman Garrett says he's for women's rights, but he votes against equal pay for equal work. He voted against the Lilly Ledbetter Act. He's one of 9 members of Congress to vote against the Violence Against Women Act. He puts out a mailer saying he led the charge in Hurricane Sandy relief, but dragging your feet and being forced to vote for something because you realize that your initial reluctance to support Hurricane Sandy aid may be a political liability for you down the road, that's not leadership. that's being forced into the equation. And this is a campaign where we should be focusing upon the issues, not character assassinations. But let's talk about Congressman Garrett's record since he's been in office since 2002. I'm asking the residents: has your life been better? What should he be doing to serve you better? That's a question I'm asking constituents.
All right, thank you, Democratic candidate Roy Cho. And now, 30 seconds for you, Congressman Scott Garrett.
So thank you. And I guess the question that constituents are asking you, Roy, is where are you from and what is your connection to the 5th Congressional District, since apparently you can't answer that question to any reporter with the same answer once after another. Appreciate that you just moved to the district a few months ago, and now you make your declaration that you want to run here. And the 5th Congressional District is a really great district to live in. Having grown up here and lived here my entire life, I've appreciated the support of the constituents throughout, from Hackensack to Hackettstown, to be able to represent their views and wishes and desires for them and their families to grow up in a more prosperous country in America. And my fight has been that in the past, and my pledge is to continue to fight and represent their views in Washington. And Joyce and Rob, again, appreciate the chance to be with you today and take part in this debate.
Okay, thank you, Congressman Scott Garrett. And that will wrap things up. We are out of time, and this completes the second of 5 political forums presented here on your local station, RNJ. We want to thank our guests, candidates for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District seat, Republican incumbent Congressman Scott Garrett and Democratic candidate Roy Cho. We also want to thank our panel, providing questions, New Jersey Herald columnist Rob Jennings and RNJ News Director Joyce Estey. Please note that this program was recorded at 11 a.m. on Friday, October 24th. We will re-air this program Sunday evening at 6 p.m., October 26th. The program will also be available online on the audio archives section of our website, WRNJ. We will continue with 3 more political forums of a local nature next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Those will, again, also be airing. And again, you can catch all the information on our website under the audio archives, WRNJ.com. I thank you very much, all of our guests and panelists. Thank you, everyone. Thank Chuck Rieger, our engineer. And I am Mike Alley. Thank you for listening. This is WRNJ, Hackettstown, Washington.